Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Random Redshirt podcast. I am one of the hosts, Zach, and with me, as always, is the other host, Chris. What's up, buddy?
Hello, Zach. Good morning, good afternoon, good day on this beautiful Sunday on the North American continent where we are. So
Yep.
hopefully your Sunday is and this day has been good so far, and you are not too cold. I'm cold. We're cold.
No, it's nice here, dude. It's like 51 degrees today. It's
Oh,
beautiful.
oh,
We have
that's
this,
nice.
yeah, we have the sliding glass door open. The kids were outside playing. Like, it's a really, my bonsai tree got to go outside it's been outside all day in the sun. So it's been a beautiful day here, actually, surprisingly. It was not that way a couple days ago, but
Oh, that's nice, man. You're like
yeah.
30 degrees warmer than me. This is cool.
Well, you were a bit
Ah,
further north than I am. So you have that going for you, I guess.
that's awesome, man.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Guess what,
Nice day, dude.
it was. Do you feel like our last episode, we talked about Discovery and we had Jenny on, which was awesome. And that
Yeah.
was good. That was a big first for us, the big Discovery journey. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Now, in all fairness, I mean, yes, we had our criticisms of the episode, right? But we had
Hmm.
things we liked too. So there, I think it was well balanced. I do. I think there was things we said we did enjoy, and there were. Well, maybe it wasn't as balanced as I'm saying it is. So yeah, you have to go watch it if you're watching or listening to us all over the globe and the interwebs. Go check that out if you haven't yet, and let us know what you think of Star Trek Discovery. We only talked about the pilot because we're doing this spotlight series and all the Star Trek pilot episodes. But yeah, that was interesting. And now we're moving to the next series as far as the air dates, which is Star Trek Lower Decks. So another first for us as we discuss what is the second animated series in the Star Trek franchise, the first being the original series animated series, the original animated series, however the heck you want to label that, that came out back, I think it was in the 70s. Um,
Yeah.
and
Yeah,
so
that's
this is,
right.
yeah. This is the second animated series that Star Trek has done, but it's obviously a lot more modern than the what they call TAS or the animated series, as it's colloquially known.
It certainly is. Lower decks indeed. Yes, another first for us. Um, I was able to rewatch the pilot. I had watched the pilot like several months ago, and then I actually watched several episodes of Lower Decks. I'm not sure that I made it through season one yet, but boy, it's they go by like really quick, and
Yeah.
it's high energy. So it was really interesting. So it was nice, really nice to go back and watch this pilot, and it'll be really cool to be able to talk about it too. And we were just talking like a few minutes ago about where Lower Decks kind of fits on the timeline because I was wondering about that too. So it looks like Lower Decks in the prime timeline fits in after Star Trek Next Generation's Nemesis.
Yep.
So between Nemesis and Star Trek Picard. So there's
Yeah.
a lot of material right there. So it's pretty cool.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and only a few years before the show Star Trek Prodigy starts, which
Ah,
I
yeah.
believe is like 2383-ish, and Lower Decks is 2380-ish, at least at the start of the series.
Hmm.
And so that's another series we'll be getting to next after this. So it'll be back-to-back animated series as far as our pilot episode discussions of the Star Trek series. And so it's interesting because Prodigy got a second season. It
Mm,
I don't think they weren't sure if that was going to happen yet, but then they ended up getting a second season. Lower Decks ended up getting 5 seasons, and now this series is over. So if you're a
okay.
Lower Decks fan, you know the series has ended. If you've never watched Lower Decks, the series has ended. So there's 5 seasons out there for you to go watch. Only 10 episodes a season. And they're, like you said, Chris, very quick, like 23, 24-ish minutes an episode.
Yeah, and they're packed with pretty dense, packed with a lot of different references and a lot of different action and movement in each of those episodes. So it's pretty neat to watch.
Yeah, the first time I had watched Lower Decks, I watched the pilot, and then I think I watched like the first 3 or 4 episodes. And so today, actually, well, no, last night I rewatched the pilot, uh, called Second Contact, which is what we're here to talk about today.
Mhm.
And then I also went back and I skipped the ones I had already watched, and then I went and watched episode. I think I watched 5, 6, and 7. Were the episodes that I hadn't seen yet. So I watched those. Very, very interesting.
Nice.
You're right. Very fast paced, very action packed. Lots going on, very high speed. And we've talked about this before, Chris, with the other series as we've gone through them. Just like any other TV show, the TV shows are very much a product of the era in which they come on, right? So I would argue Lower Decks is the same thing. It's a very much a product of this era, which is very fast paced. It's very short seasons. In this case, they're short episodes in that they're animated.
Hmm.
And it reminds me a little bit of a Star Trek version of like Family Guy, and you had brought up Rick and Morty
Hmm.
when we were talking earlier. So I think that all kind of makes sense.
Yeah, it does. So like, and with same like with Family Guy and with Rick and Morty, there are a lot of kind of cultural and backstory jokes that are made and references that are made and Easter eggs that are made. So
Yeah.
like the more like knowledge you have on the source materials for whatever they're talking about, makes you enjoy this content like even more. And you might have to go back and like rewatch some because you have to pay attention,
Yeah.
to these references that they're making because they're talking so fast and things are moving so fast. So you want to be able to catch them and enjoy it.
You're absolutely right. When I went back and rewatched the pilot, because I'd only seen it once, I was like, "Oh, I didn't catch that reference the first time,
Hmm.
right? Or this reference the first time," which is good. Um, it's it from what I've seen so far. I mean, I've only watched like the first 6 episodes or 7 episodes. I'm liking it. I mean, would I say it's my favorite Star Trek series so far? No, but again, I'm not even a full season into it. But I've definitely noticed the references to things. In fact, I think one of the episodes I want to say it sounded like J.G. Hertzler, who plays Martok, and a few other characters throughout the Star Trek
Ah,
universe. It plays this like space junkie pirate character in I think it was the 6th episode or something like that. I think it was his voice. I'd have to go back and verify that, but it sounded
yeah.
eerily similar to him. But we are here to talk about Star Trek Lower Decks, the first episode of the series called Second Contact. And if this is your first time joining us on the show, welcome to the Random Redshirt podcast. We're a couple of nerdy guys who like to talk about all things nerdy, Star Trek to Star Wars, and everything in between. You can find us on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, Threads. Let's see what else. Your favorite podcast platform and all that other good jazz. So we welcome you and we thank you for joining us. And we look forward to many more episodes as we continue through this series. And Chris, I was wondering if
Yeah.
you might be willing to announce, because we've got Prodigy, we got a cover of the pilot episode there, and then
Hmm.
also Strange New Worlds, at least an in-depth of the pilot, because we just did the whole season
Yeah.
when it first came out, season one. But I'm wondering if you're willing to talk about or announce the next Spotlight series coming up here after we get through. Well, I shouldn't say get through,
Yeah,
but
that'd be
after we
lovely. Yeah.
discuss next couple series.
Yeah, we sure will. Yeah. Yeah. After you want to talk about it now? Like announce it now or after?
Yeah, do you want to mention it?
Yeah, I do want to. Yeah, let's mention it. So, right now there's the whole as we know, like Section 31, the I think it's a movie
It
actually
is,
is
yeah.
out
Yeah,
on
yeah.
Paramount streaming. Zach, you and we have not watched it, so we were like,
Correct.
okay, we're not going to watch it now. But that got us thinking. We're like, well, Section 31 is a thing and has come in. It has been in Star Trek in some in various series, and so let's do like a spotlight, a deep dive on the episodes that feature Section 31, and then we can go back, and then after we watch that and kind of internally, you and I think kind of talked about what Section 31 is to us, like how we envision like this Section 31 organization. Then we'll go back and well, before we watch the movie, we'll kind of talk about what we think would be in a Section 31 or what would be of interest to you and I in a Section 31 and wanting to learn about Section 31. And then we'll watch the Section 31 movie and then
Yeah.
come back and huddle and talk about what we experienced. I think it's
It's
going to be fun.
Yeah, there's gonna be some spicy conversations because Section 31 in and of itself is a an very dark, very secretive, squirrely part of, the Federation,
Mhm.
part of Starfleet that is in the shadows, right? And they're doing things that are contrary to the values and principles that you would normally see in your leading captain of a Star Trek series or your everyday average Starfleet officer. And so I know we had some conversations on the phone about
Yeah.
this, about how not only would this be very fascinating to do, like we've done with the the Prime episode, Prime universe. No, sorry, the Legacy Star
Hmm.
Trek
Hmm.
episodes for the Mirror Universe, as well as doing all the pilots. It'd be cool to go back and watch the specific Section 31 episodes. Now, that being said, it's going to be initially DS9 and Enterprise for Section 31 stuff.
Yeah.
And then I think there's going to be a little bit of Discovery sprinkled in there.
Yeah.
I'd have to go research if there's any Section 31 stuff referenced here in Lower Decks. There might be. So
Might
we'll
be.
have to take a look at that. But otherwise, yeah, it's going to be really good. There'll be some very deep moral
Mhm.
implications and discussions and philosophical discussions as part of that.
Yeah. And we'll be sure to give, we definitely want to give credit to those creators that first conceived of the idea of Section 31, and they've talked a little bit about it, and then you and I will kind of explore that, like, okay, what did they mean by this? But it'll be really interesting going to the roots on seeing what did they conceive about this Section 31, because
Yeah,
um you know eh, the Federation and Starfleet, you're right, is very much a principle guided organization. Um, you know, it's an ideal principle guided organization that we see our captains like talk about a lot. But some some things have to occur in the background to allow such organizations to exist. Right.
that's
So,
true.
yeah.
That's true. So we'll get to all that. We're excited for that. That's going to be awesome. It's going to be a dive into the dark worlds of Starfleet and the Federation and everything that it entails. So we're looking forward to that. But in the
Yeah.
meantime, we're going to talk about Lower Decks. We're going to talk about Prodigy. We're going to talk about Strange New Worlds. And I think we probably should, at least in a deep dive fashion, talk about the first episode of Star Trek Picard, because we never did just the first episode of
Yeah.
that either. We just did the first
Yeah.
season, right? So that might be on the docket as well. Okay,
Yeah.
let's jump into Star Trek Lower Decks, season one, episode one, entitled Second Contact. Now, this show, for those of you who have never seen Lower Decks, for those of you who have, you're going to just roll your eyes, but that's okay. For those of you who've never seen this show follows the support crew, or the young ensigns and lieutenants and stuff that are in the lower decks of the ship on one of Starfleet's least important ships, the USS Cerritos, beginning in 2380. We see a few characters early on: Ensigns Mariner, Boimler, Rutherford, and Tendi, trying to keep up with all of the duties they have to do. They have their own personal lives. And usually, this is all going on where there's a variety of various uh, issues and events that they're running into, like you would in any normal Star Trek episode. And so this is the first episode as we jump into Star Trek Lower Decks.
Absolutely is. And what a fun premise, too, as well for a series, I think. And do you remember, I just thought of this. There was an episode in Star Trek The Next Generation, and I don't remember the name of the episode, but it might have been uh it was the junior crew.
I
Um,
think it wasn't it called Lower Decks.
I want to say it was called Lower Decks, but yeah, it was all about the junior crew and them like
Yeah,
vying for promotion,
it
right? So
was. It
yeah.
was. It was. There was an episode called Lower Decks, which I'm not 100% sure if that's where they kind of got the name or the idea from. But it was a Star Trek The Next Generation episode. I want to say
Yeah.
it was season five, maybe.
Hmm.
Correct me if I'm wrong on that. But I want to say it was season five, episode. No, sorry, season seven, episode 15. So this is towards the end of the TNG series,
Yeah. Yeah.
where you have lower decks. Similar kind of fashion, right? That episode
Yeah.
talk had a lot of the like junior officers, right?
Yeah, and it was the junior officers' kind of perspective on how the senior officers acted and behave, and what was important to the senior officers. So I this lower decks, I love the aesthetic because it is very much in that TNG kind of Voyager and DS9 like aesthetic feel, and I really like the animation. It really holds to that.
Yeah.
and it starts off with a captain's log, which was great. Like at the moment it starts off with the captain's log, you don't know that it's Boimler. You learn that a little bit later, but it was a very funny episode. We're doing the captain's log, and then the the door opens, and there's Mariner saying like, "What are you doing?" And she completely teases him, saying, "Are you doing a captain's log?"
Yeah.
And that was great. And so Boimler's got all these aspirations to be in command, and be a good officer. I thought that was great.
Yeah. And Ensign Mariner does not. She's the opposite of that, right? Like she likes the kind of being where she's at. And the whole idea of a fake captain's log is hysterical.
Mhm.
I, the premise for this show, I think, is great because instead of just doing another Star Trek series, but making it animated and following the crew of a ship, and it's based around the captain and the main crew or the senior officers like every other Star Trek series, they went a different route. I'm assuming that they got the idea for this from that TNG episode because it would make sense. I don't know. I haven't researched that. So if you're watching or listening to us, send us a message or a note. Let us know if that is indeed true or if you've got a different story behind that because it's probably been told. I just don't know. But it's a great idea. You're following the junior officers who are in the bowels of the ship, right? The
Mhm.
lower decks and following their everyday lives. And the animation is great. It very much reminds me of like Family Guy style animation. So
Yeah.
I kind of consider this series as like the Star Trek version of Family Guy.
Yeah.
Maybe, but just a little bit less crude, but still very Family Guy esque.
Yeah. Yeah. And for me, it's really similar to, or I got to feel it was like Rick and Morty.
Yeah,
I I love that they get right into there's contraband and there's kind of I don't know if Easter eggs is the right word to say, but they start going, oh, she's got the Romulan whiskey and the Romulan ale right there, and they start talking about that, and they've got the Klingon bat'leth, and then they
yeah,
start fighting with the Klingon bat'leth, and then and then Boimler gets stabbed with the
she
Klingon bat'leth.
slices his leg.
Yeah, yeah, that was great, I think.
Yeah, that's just complete buffoonery, right? You have these young
Mhm.
officers who are, you know, pretty immature. They're very easygoing. They like to mess around a lot. Although Boimler's not. I mean, I love the kind of the yin and the yang, the opposites of Boimler. Like you said, he's very driven, very I want to be a captain and be in command at one point, and Mariner, who is just kind of a goofball, and they kind of play off each other. At least for the first 6, 7 episodes I've seen, there's very much that like oil and water kind of
Mhm.
effect between the two of them. Boimler changes a little bit, at least at the point I'm at, but in this particular episode, this pilot episode, he is very different from Mariner.
Yeah, yeah, very, very different from Mariner. And we learn that Mariner later, we learned a little bit later in the episode, we learned Mariner's been on several different ships. She's been, promoted and then demoted. And then we learn the history like, oh, well, she's actually the admiral and the captain's like daughter. And so,
Yeah.
yeah, it was pretty cool.
Now, not personality wise, but like
Mhm.
the fact that she's kind of a troublemaker, she doesn't follow rules and everything. Does she remind you a little bit of Ro Laren in that regard? Like Ro Laren was very much this kind of nobody really wanted her around, she
Mhm.
talks back to officers, which Mariner doesn't seem to have a whole lot of respect for rank. I mean, no, again, there's a lot of differences between those two characters, but there's a number of similarities that kind of remind me of Ro Laren a little bit.
Yes, if Rolarin was a happy, like happy individual.
Well, and in Ro Laren's defense, right? I mean, Ro Laren had been through a lot as a
Yeah,
Bajoran, right?
yeah.
And we don't learn about all the stuff that the Bajorans have gone through and the occupation and everything until we get to DS9. But knowing that and knowing what Ro Laren went through, you kind of understand why she was the way she was.
Hmm.
But there's another episode, a few episodes later, where Mariner mentions she's like, I've been through some stuff and seen some things, and then the episode is like she's talking to two of her friends at the bar. I think it's on DS9 actually, or they let me say it look like maybe it's like D Space 3 is what she said it was, which looks a lot like DS9. Um,
Hmm. Yeah.
and she's talking and she's like, oh, her friend's boyfriend or whatever is perfect and everything like that. And then his skin gets ripped apart and he's this giant alien and starts like eating things. And so she acts like she's been through a lot and seen some things, but yeah, very different personality, obviously, but certainly the way in which they are towards senior officers and how defiant she is and everything is very Leonard-esque.
Yeah, yeah, that's cool. That's pretty cool. So the other characters that we meet, so we meet Tindy, Ensign Tindy, who is a Orion, so that's pretty cool. And then we meet the gentleman with the cybernetic like implants. Oh, I'm gonna forget his name.
Rutherford, right? Rutherford's his
Rutherford,
name.
yes.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, so Tindy and Rutherford, who like turn out they're kind of the main four like characters of this,
Yes.
which is pretty
At
cool.
least early on, right? I mean, I know
Yeah.
there's other characters that come in, but for the purposes of this episode, discussing the pilot, yeah, they're definitely the main four.
Yeah. So on the senior crew, I want to bring this up while I remember. The first officer, his name is Ransom,
Yeah.
Jack Ransom. And I immediately thought about Voyager and Captain Ransom. You remember?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
remember that?
Yeah. Yeah.
I
Yeah.
was like,
Yeah.
I know that name.
Yeah. I
So,
wonder because obviously you and I have not watched the whole series, right? So I
yeah.
wonder if at some point they explain maybe in some way he's related to that
Oh,
ransom. Like
oh, that'd be interesting.
maybe he's
Yeah.
his son because remember Captain Ransom and the Prometheus get trapped in the Delta Quadrant as well, and they're
Or
like
Equinox,
holding
Equinox.
or
Yeah.
Equinox, sorry,
Yeah.
yeah, and they're holding those interdimensional beings hostage, and that's causing all the attacks, right? When you first meet him.
Yeah.
But maybe his son was back in the Alpha Quadrant and this is his son. I don't know. I haven't we haven't gotten that far yet, but
We
maybe.
haven't. But that is a perfect idea. If they that's a great that's genius, Zach. If they did do that in the show, that's like awesome. If they
Well,
didn't, well, this would have been like a great opportunity.
well, I just thought of that, and the only reason I even thought of that is because you mentioned, Captain Ransom from Voyager. I was like, well, maybe later in the show there's a relationship there. I mean, you kind of think with the last name Ransom that
Hmm.
there's something there, right, from that captain in Voyager.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's pretty cool.
But see, that's what I mean. Like people told me who have watched this series that it's just so full of interconnectedness,
Yeah.
to all the other series that you see things like this and you instantly think, oh, well, maybe it's tied to this or this. And, it's one of many reasons why people love this series so much.
The name of the starship is the Cerritos. It's the ship Cerritos, which is pretty cool. Can I back up? I want to back up to the
Yeah,
opening
yeah,
credits.
yeah.
I do like the opening credits because it starts off kind of uh this it's majestic and this kind of heroic music, and then you see the ship fall into the black hole,
And then it comes spitting
and then they
out.
have to come out. Then you
Yeah.
see the ship like kind of going like around some there's some ice, and then it runs into the ice, knocks the ice apart. Then you see it's like in a Borg conflict. All these Romulan warlords are in a Borg conflict, and the ship is there. And then you see the ship turn around and like retreat and
And
go
leave.
back. Yeah, and then it's oh, and then there's like a giant space squid that's like sucking on the warp nacelles, which
Yeah.
was pretty funny.
Which is harkening back to TNG's Galaxy's Child, the one where the creature births the baby.
Yeah,
That bizarre episode. Maybe that's a homage to that, but uh,
maybe. Yeah,
yeah, I mean we've talked about I think we've talked about every single series opening credits and theme song and stuff. And to me, I think I like it too, and I think this very much fits the show. It's got like the serious aspect of like the exploration and what you would see in another Star Trek opening credits, and
yeah,
then it throws in a comedic, random, funny thing that it's like, okay, yeah. So it's the opening credits is paying homage to the seriousness of the exploration and everything that Star Trek does, but then it's throwing in the goofiness of Lower Decks, and I think that marries pretty well.
yeah. It does. It does. I had just kind of random thought. So sorry, apologies for this random
That's
thought,
what
but
we do, man.
yeah,
That's what we do.
but there was a there was a Star Trek: The Next Generation episode where the Enterprise essentially had a baby. The Enterprise
Yeah.
had like a baby Enterprise, and so I was just thinking this Lower Decks series was just kind of is the perfect kind of forum and format where they would run into the baby of the Enterprise. I have no idea like what episodes are in Lower Deck, but I could just see some hijinks
Yeah.
associated with that.
Uh, Lower Decks to me kind of feels like the great or great great grandchild of TNG a little bit.
Mm. Yeah.
Um, I- did you like the design of the Starfleet uniforms in this? I thought they were very interesting. I kind of dig them. They have a little bit of TNG meets the Monster Maroons with like the rip
Hmm.
apart piece. There's an episode where like I think it's like episode 3 or 4 where one of the crew, two of the lower decks ensigns are gonna get in a fight or whatever, and like the guy rips part of his uniform down. He's like, "You want to go?" or whatever, and
Yeah.
so it kind of reminds me of that a little bit.
Yeah. I like them. I like them. I think they're pretty cool.
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. There's a lot of stuff that happens in this episode. We'll get to all of that because it's packed.
yeah,
But okay, let's. I would say one of the funniest parts for me in this episode is where they go to the holo. This cracked me up. They go to the holodeck, and Boimler's like, "Well, my favorite place of the ship is like the warp drive."
yeah.
And I think Mariner says, "Hey, take us to Hawaii." They go to Hawaii. Um, and Boimler, where do you want to go? And he goes, "Well, I want to see the warp drive." And they go to the warp drive in the holodeck. And then he gets called away to the bridge. And then and Mariner goes, okay, I mean, you learn like Mariner and Boimler have served together for like a while before this first show. And she goes, load like Boimler's holodeck program, like Olympic training with nude athletes.
Yeah.
It loads, and then I think Tindy says, "This is really specific."
Yeah, yeah. It's
I
like
was
really
like, "Oh,
detailed or whatever, right?
yeah, this
Yeah.
is really
There's a bunch
detailed."
of dudes that are showing their butt cheeks lifting
So,
weights and stuff.
so I laughed out loud at that part.
Yeah.
But so much happens in this. There's a giant like spider. There's uh like zombies. Essentially, the ship turns into zombies. Um, there's the whole second contact kind of premise, which I thought was funny in itself.
Yeah.
Thinking, what is second contact? Well, we're the ones that come in after first contact and do all the paperwork. We do all the
Yeah.
paperwork.
Yeah.
Yeah. Um, yeah, and so they have all of the battling on like on the ship because the ship kind of essentially gets taken over by the by the zombies,
Oh
which
yeah,
was pretty
the
great.
zombies. The
Yeah,
zombies.
yeah.
When we were talking about our Halloween episode, this episode isn't scary. Not it's not really scary, but like I was thinking when we talked about Enterprise and like the zombie
Mhm.
Vulcans, and we kind of, I guess up till that point, that had been the first time we'd really seen like zombie characters. But then Lower Decks in its pilot episodes brings in zombie Starfleet
Yeah,
officers.
yeah. I agree. I was thinking about that Enterprise episode as well, so I thought it was
Yeah,
pretty cool. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
and I
Um,
immediately thought of that. I was thinking like, oh, the pilot episode has zombie Starfleet officers in it. Chris is gonna love this because we talked so much about the zombie Vulcans during our Halloween series.
yeah, we did. Yeah, which is just a great premise. Um, yeah, you have the senior crew like get infected, like First Officer Ransom and the I don't know that the chief of security ever gets infected. I like him as a character. I think he's hilarious. The
Oh
chief
my
of security,
gosh.
the huge guy. He's
Yeah,
funny.
there was an episode. I think it was the last episode I just watched, 6 or 7, and I think it was 6. And there are these pirates trying to steal Federation. They're trying to salvage Federation parts that
Mhm.
have been floating in space for like 100 years, and they're like, "Well, we were here first. It's ours." And then they were like, "No, this is Federation property." Blah blah. And the security guy's like, "Can we fire on him?" And she's like, "Not yet." And he's like, "But I've been good all week."
Oh
So
yeah, I've been good all week.
oh
Yeah.
yeah, that was hilarious. So yeah, it's very much a lighthearted take on these characters, right? There's very much a funny side to all these characters, and there is a lot of humor in this. I mean, I didn't laugh at every joke, everything that occurs in this episode and the other ones I've watched so far, but I've definitely laughed. There were definitely some funny moments where I'm like, oh, I was like, okay, that's good, that's funny. Whether it
Yeah.
was a reference to something in another Star Trek series or whether it was just something they made up for the show. The humor is definitely there.
Like earlier in the episode, the captain calls up Boimler and says, like, "Yeah, you show a lot of promise, and I'm going to give you a special assignment." And the special assignment is just to what monitor
Yeah,
Mariner,
spy on
spy
her
on
basically,
Mariner.
yeah, and report back.
Yeah, which he kind of does,
Yeah.
but he doesn't rat her out, which is good.
I was waiting to see if that was going to happen because I couldn't remember. Again, I've only seen this episode once. And I'm glad he didn't in the sense that had he done that, that might have significantly affected their their relationship. So
Yeah.
it keeps that intact moving forward.
Yeah. Yeah. So that was good. But the scene with the when they're down on the planet, right? And so Boimler thinks that Mariner's selling these new aliens weapons, which she's not. She's just trying to get them farm equipment. But that whole scene with the, I guess the milk spider,
Yeah,
the milk
something
sp-
like that.
was just ridiculous. And she says,
They take off their clothes and
"Yeah, take
like,
off your pants, Boimler. Like I've done all this. I need you to trust me." And then yeah, and then the milk spider just starts sucking on Boimler for like the
yeah.
next like several minutes.
Yeah, and then they're like, "Oh, it's not eating him; it's just sucking the liquid or something out of him and stuff." And it's getting to the point to where it sucks on him so much that the spider ends up passing out and going to sleep, and he's just like laying there and he's like covered in the pink goo, which comes into play later. It's
Yeah,
very important.
yeah, I like that. Um, and I like that Tindy and Rutherford, so Rutherford's kind of he goes on this date like throughout the whole episode, and um he's with I think she's a Trill, isn't she? She looked like a Trill,
Yeah, she
maybe.
looked like a
Yeah.
troll to me too. Yeah, the
Yeah.
spots.
Yeah. And so but Rutherford like at the end, it doesn't work out on the date, and he's like, "Yeah, I couldn't believe like she didn't understand," and he's talking about some like engineering or scientific things. She didn't understand why this like didn't happen. And Tindy kind of looks at him. She goes, "Yeah, I completely understand," and she bonds with Rutherford over that. So that was cute. I love that they were so they were such nerds. Rutherford and Tindy, like complete nerds. That was cute.
But I mean, and it kind of makes sense too, right? Because you have these young officers, many of them are aspiring to, you know,
Hmm.
progress, move forward. Not everybody, but a lot of them are. And it's their life, it's their social life, it's their work, it's the tasks, it's the events that they run into. Some of them cause catastrophic things to happen and they have to work
Hmm.
their way out of it. Um, but it really follows that, which I think is great. And it gives you a glimpse into members of the crew of a ship that you don't normally see or
Yeah.
see very, very little of. So you don't see these things happening. And you can kind of see, like, some of these young officers and they're, again, a little immature and maybe they're having a little too much fun. You could see some things that happen in this pilot happening, right? Is the way they're ribbing each other, and they're
Hmm.
they're having a good time and so forth. And Ensign Barnes, I believe, was the name of that
Barnes.
trill that Rutherford goes on. I love it when like she says something and he responds in some like Vulcan response with no emotion. And he's like, "Oh, I'm sorry," as like this Vulcan implant chip or whatever, and causes me to you know suppress my emotions or whatever. And I thought that was a great little thing. It's also interesting too. We have a character that has cybernetic implants slash upgrades, which I'm like, okay, so at this point, 2380, they're, I guess, maybe okay with people being enhanced in
Guess
some way.
so.
Now, it's not
Yeah.
genetically enhanced, but there is an enhancement aspect here that was banned because of Khan and all of the eugenics wars and everything. But apparently in 2380, cybernetic parts are okay.
And I guess they've gotten over the whole phobia with the Borg. I mean, wouldn't you be,
Yeah, right.
wouldn't you
That's
have
true.
that? Like,
Yeah.
so that'd be funny. Maybe there's some Borg episodes that come in and we could watch that and see how
There
they
probably
play.
are, yeah.
Yeah.
But now that will be interesting sometime down the road to do a spotlight series of just all the Borg stuff because
Oh yeah,
you'd
yeah.
get some TNG stuff. There'd be no DS9. You'd get Voyager. Voyager had a couple, one or two Borg episodes where they found stuff in the ice, I think, or whatever.
Hmm.
Or no, that's Enterprise. No, but Voyager had a ton of Borg stuff with the Borg Queen and everything else. And then you have Enterprise. And there was one or two episodes. I think it was a two-parter where they find the Borg bodies in Antarctica or something like that
Yeah.
under the ice.
Yeah, yeah. That was a good one.
So there's a number of Borg stuff that you could talk about, and then of course, I mean, Picard deals with Borg a ton.
Hmm.
So that could maybe be a spotlight series down the road. We all love the Borg episodes.
I love the doctor. I love the
No, the
cat,
cat.
the cat doctor in this. She's funny.
Yeah.
She's
She's
funny.
very snarky. She reminds me of like an
Yeah.
animated version of McCoy, very like just salty.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And then, Boimler gets beamed back up. He's covered in the spider milk slime. I guess
Yeah,
that's what you would call it.
I
But
guess.
that spider milk slime is the key to, curing
Yeah.
the zombie infestation throughout the ship, which was
Yeah.
cool.
Taana, I think's how you pronounce the doctor's name.
Yeah.
I want to say it's how you pronounce it. Um, and I love how I think it was Tendi who comes in. She's like, "I'm supposed to be here supporting Nurse Westlake," and the
Ah.
doctor's like, "That is Nurse Westlake," and he's all like strapped down and zombie. And she's like, "Oh, it's going to be such a pleasure to work with you." He's just spewing black sludge on her, and so yeah, some very funny moments here. I thought it was interesting that the first episode of this series, and you've got zombies. I found that very fascinating because I think, like we said, prior to this, I only remember one Star Trek episode ever dealing with anything close to zombies, which was that Enterprise episode with the crazed Vulcans.
Yeah, they are. Um, and what a yeah. Yeah, this was kind of a yeah, the Vulcans had a ship where they got taken over by zombies with their crew, and then now it's time for the Federation to have a ship and the officers like with that rage virus taking over. So it was good.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's a lot that happens in here. So
Yeah.
this was really neat.
And we get a little bit of insight too into both Mariner and Boimler on the planet when she mentions to Boimler that her service record included being on 5 different ships,
Hmm.
and that Boimler's experience is nothing compared to hers. And I think she's like, "What have you been on? Like 5 planets or whatever,
Hmm.
including Vulcan, which doesn't count or whatever, and Earth maybe." And he's like, "Well, yeah, like he's been on like 3 planets and stuff." So it's evident that Mariner has a significantly longer career so far than Boimler. And we know that obviously Mariner has, like you mentioned before, right? She had been promoted and demoted. And so she's had a bit of a rough go. And so she's just kind of going along with the flow, at least so far, because I think, doesn't she even mention she's not like trying to chase rank and those senior officers are overrated and all they think about is themselves and everything
Hmm.
else. And Boimler looks at them as like these gods, these people who are heroes of the Federation and so forth. And so a much different view and aspect from them on what the future of each of their careers look like.
Yeah, that's right. And you get the sense that Mariner has a good heart. I mean, she wants to help those alien farmers, and she specifically says, "Hey, we don't have time for Starfleet to get through its bureaucracy before it's able to help them." So, that's why
Yeah.
she wants to give them the farming tools.
Yeah,
Um,
I think she even mentioned Starfleet General Order 5.
mm,
So, um, she knows. I mean, she knows the regs as well as Boimler does.
mhm,
And I think my one of my favorite lines in the episode is where she mentions to Boimler that he needs to stop basically just following blindly, right? Like that he needs to be able to think for himself.
mhm.
And that there's this idea that she thinks for herself, right? And that yeah, there's regulations and there's this, that, and the other, but sometimes right is right. I know she doesn't say that exactly, but I like that kind of message that's being portrayed here.
Yeah. Yeah, so it was fun. It was fun. I like it. I'm looking forward to. I have seen some other episodes, but I don't recall them. I'm looking forward to seeing what the other ones are. This episode conclude. I mean, after they're able to kind of cure the rage virus and um and come back down, sh- Mariner and Boimler reconnect, and Mariner then realizes that Boimler did not rat her out to the captain per se. So
Yeah.
then she's like ecstatic and really happy. And then all of a sudden she's like, "Oh, I'm going to be your like mentor. I'm going to be your Chadich." And then she just she just starts spewing out a whole bunch of stuff to Boimler, which was kind of
Yeah.
cute. Yeah.
Yeah. A bunch of references, right, to
Hmm.
Kirk and Spock. And I believe they reference, I want to say, Wrath of Khan
They
in Star
do.
Trek 4, The Voyage Home with the
Yeah.
whales. I want to say those
Space
two are
whales.
both.
Yep. She calls them space whales.
Yeah. Well, they kind of were, right? They're beamed up
Yeah.
on board the Klingon bird of prey, and then they're taken back ahead in time, and then dropped on Earth. But I loved the interplay and that moment between the captain and the admiral,
Hmm.
because you learn that Mariner is the captain's daughter,
Hmm.
and the
Yeah.
admiral is is Mariner's father, and they're like, well, she's like, well, she's your daughter and everything, and he's like, well, put her in the brig, but she's like, that doesn't work with Mariner.
She
She
loves
and
the
she
brig.
loves the
Yeah.
brig. Yeah, yeah, exactly. So Captain Freeman protests that she's like she keeps undermining me in front of my crew, and the admiral's like, oh, nobody notices that, and she's like, yeah, they do though, they do notice, and so there's this kind of like he tries to sweet talk her and everything, and he's like, "Well, I gotta go. I got admiral stuff to attend to."
Admiral
He's like,
stuff.
"See ya." So that scene was very funny. I thought that was great, and then of course that we get insight into Mariner right away in this first episode.
Yeah. I like that Admiral stuff.
Yeah, the
Admiral
admiral
stuff.
stuff, right? Exactly. Yeah, but this
Um,
was a fun
yeah.
episode, like you said. I think that there was lots of references to um, other things. In fact, I know we got some references for Starfleet history, like Spock, Kirk, Khan. I don't want to forget a reference to Hikaru Sulu,
Ah,
Worf, Gary Mitchell, and Deanna Troy.
yeah. I was surprised that they said Gary Mitchell, honestly. And that I
I
was
thought that
like,
was
oh wow.
cool.
Yeah.
I thought that was great because we talked about both the pilots for TOS, and we talked about how much we enjoyed both the pilots in their own respects. And I thought that the character of Gary Mitchell and the interplay between him and Kirk was great. So the fact that they bring that character in to this is really cool to see them reference that second pilot.
Yeah, I agree. Nice.
Yeah,
So are you going to continue watching like you're several episodes in right now. Are you going to continue watching like going through like not stopping, just continuing to the end, you think?
yeah. I wanna give the show a fair shake. And
Hmm.
like, is it my favorite Star Trek series so far? No, it's not. But that's okay. I do like what I've watched so far. There are some moments where I'm like, that's not really that funny, and other moments where I definitely laughed out loud.
Mm.
And it's just that's always going to be dependent, right? Like there's going to be things that make you laugh more than make me laugh, and vice versa, and other people as well. So I want to give it a fair shake. I'd like to say I want to watch at least the first two full seasons, and
Mm.
then decide, do I want to continue and just watch the whole series, or that's enough for me, kind of
Yeah.
thing. So far, I could see myself watching the whole series, but we'll see where things go. How about you?
Yeah, I'd like to keep watching. I'm kind of like I'm not I'm like at this point I've got a few different things to watch and read,
Mm.
and I'm like, oh, okay, what do I like continue on like from right now? Because I had watched a little bit of the next few episodes of Discovery,
Oh
and
yeah,
then I was like, oh, should I continue with that? And then there was here with Lower Decks. Then you and I had also talked about like The Expanse, and I hadn't, I maybe watched a little bit again of the second episode of season one. So I'm a little bit at like, oh, okay, which should I
yeah,
continue on for the purposes of us being able to discuss and watch them? So yeah.
yeah. Well, I did watch some of the Expanse, first season of the Expanse so far. I want to finish that, and we can start talking about the Expanse. I did. Now, this has nothing to do with the podcast, but I
Mm.
did watch. I just decided one day I want to go back and watch all the Lethal Weapon movies. So I watched
Oh,
all
there you
four of the.
go. Yeah.
Yeah, I watched all four of the Lethal Weapon movies over a matter of, I don't know, it's a couple of weeks. I think
Hmm.
I'd watch one on the weekend, right? Um, but the one thing I like about Lower Decks is that the episodes are short, right? So if you only have like I got like 30 minutes that I can devote to anything, you could pop in a single episode of Lower Decks and just watch the next one, and then just, work your way through it as you have time. It's different than watching, and there's only 5 seasons and 10 episodes a season, right? So it's different than watching the Legacy Star Trek series where it's like there's 7 seasons, there's like 25, 26 episodes a season,
Mm.
and they're 40 plus minutes long. So
Hmm.
it's a lot different. And these are very fast paced. So to me, I found a couple of the episodes where I was watching them. It's like I started the episode and within it felt like 2 minutes the episode's over
Over,
because
yeah.
it's so fast paced, right? There's a lot going on and there's a lot keeping your attention compared to some of the other Star Trek series.
Yeah, it's a like a snack or like candy. It's like a
Yeah,
sweet piece of candy or a snack like you do. Um, yeah, we'll see. I know m my wife is like if ever I'm gonna watch like something animated, she goes, "Oh, you're gonna watch a cartoon?" So she does not like when I put
she gives you flack or gives you a hard time.
yes, I get hard time. And I
Yeah.
say, "It's not a cartoon, it's anime." And then that doesn't change anything. I said it's an animated film. And then
um, I'm gonna make a small confession here. I don't know if I should. Well, yeah, I'll do it. It's on the podcast. Everybody's gonna see it. That's fine. My wife, the thing that my wife has given me the most grief over. Now, granted, I do not watch this very often. It's like
Mhm.
once in a blue moon I'll watch this, and I just watched like 2 episodes the other night just because I was bored and I had nothing else to watch at the time. And I watched because it's on Paramount Plus. I watched a couple episodes of the original Beavis and Butthead. And my
Yeah, I've seen
wife gives
those.
me
Yeah.
so much crap. She's like, I cannot believe you watch that trash. And I was like, well, I didn't really watch it a whole lot when I was younger. Um, I don't know if I don't really think my parents care, to be honest with you, but I remember watching a little bit here and there. That was back when like MTV actually played music videos instead of
Yeah.
all the reality trash they play now. And in the original Beavis and Butthead episodes, they still play those music videos and they have the commentary to them and stuff. So I don't know. It's one of those things where it's like, it's such stupid garbage humor that I'll put it on and it just allows my brain to completely empty and just watch something with zero brain skills required. I don't know. Like I said, I rarely watch it, but it's kind of one of those things where I'm like, yeah, it's like a guilty. I don't even know if I want to call it guilty pleasure, but it's something I watch once in a while. And my wife thinks she's like, that's the stupidest thing you've ever like of all the things you watch. That is by far the dumbest thing. I'm like, well, all right, whatever. She's like, that says something about you. I'm like, does it though? I mean, come on. Let's talk about some of the reality trash you watch. But all right.
Hey,
So
I'm
yeah.
gonna this is this I'm gonna I'm going on a complete like defense for you, my friend.
Okay,
So
please do.
so
I
yeah.
need a defense attorney in my
Yeah.
corner, Chris.
Yeah, this is the complete defense for you. Like so throughout our professional lives, right? So we're dealing with you've got to make decisions. Sometimes the topics are very, very, very complicated. The paths are not forward. There's a lot of kind of like a deep thought, coordination, a lot of rework that has to be done for the stuff we do, right? There's a lot of different factors and stakeholders. So it's mentally like it's mentally intense.
Yeah, it's taxing.
Yeah. And then you don't want to have to we don't want to have to like observe something, watch something where it's very heavy, very heady, right? No. You just just,
Veg out, zone out, right? Yeah,
just what you want just something that is ridiculous,
it
completely
is.
ridiculous.
It really is.
And that doesn't, it is just completely ridiculous and enjoyable to watch. So that is you know, that is
Yeah,
some complete defense of you
yeah.
watching Beavis and Butthead.
I appreciate the defense.
Yeah.
Your Honor, the defense rests its case.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I watched an episode of Beavis and Butthead. Was it last night or two? No, a couple nights ago, and
Mhm.
they were tasked to sell chocolate bars to their school to raise money, and they're $2, and they sell two candy bars to one of their neighbors, the guy who becomes king of the hill.
Mhm.
And they're like, we'll sell you ours for half off. And so he's like, okay, I'll give each of you $1. He takes two candy bars, and then they each have $1. And then I think it was Butthead was like, hey, Beavis, I'll buy one of your candy bars off you. He's like, you only have $1 though. It's like you could loan me $1, and then I'll give you $2. Like, oh yeah, that sounds good. That sounds good. But all right. And then they just the dollars keep going back and forth between each other, and they just keep eating all the chocolate. And then they come in, and yeah. Anyway, so it's so incredibly stupid, but it was just one of those things where I don't know, I just completely zoned out and then just laughed at some stupid stuff.
Yeah.
Anyways, so and not only that, Chris, but we watch a lot of stuff where we're very intensely watching and we're describing and we're breaking down stuff for the podcast.
Yeah.
Very heady stuff a lot of times. So it's nice to have something where your brain just mushifies. That's not a word. I made it up. Mushifies and you don't have to think.
Yeah, Beavis and Butthead is intentionally ridiculous, like and funny.
Yeah.
Um, and then you get the have you seen the smart versions of Beavis and Butthead
Yes.
yet? Yes.
Yeah.
Smart Beavis and Butthead. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a thing. But anyways, so if you're watching or listening to us all over the globes and the interwebs, we hope you've enjoyed our look at the pilot episode of Star Trek Lower Decks entitled Second Contact. As part of our current Spotlight series, as we're going through all the pilot episodes for the different Star Trek series, next up is Star Trek Prodigy, which either I've watched the whole pilot episode or I only watched part of it. I'm looking forward to jumping into that because it's something I've watched literally almost none of. And that should be a lot of fun to discuss. It's going to be a great time. Another animated episode. Now, this particular episode or a series of Star Trek Prodigy is actually aimed towards a younger audience.
Hmm.
Lower Decks is animated, so people think, oh, it's for younger audience, but it's not really, in my opinion. I think it's more of a adult cartoon, right? Like Family Guy in a certain regard, or Rick and Morty. It's not a I wouldn't say it's a kid show. But Prodigy, my understanding, was geared towards kids. So that'll be interesting to see because Star Wars has done that. I mean, Star Wars is geared towards kids in general, but Star Wars has made real like kid oriented type of shows. Like Skeleton Crew, for example, is very aimed towards a young audience. So this, I believe, is also that way.
Yeah. Lower Decks is adult.
Yeah.
There's language in Lower Decks, which is adult language. Funny,
Yeah.
funny for the circumstance, but
Yeah.
it's adult.
For sure. So yeah. So if we, maybe we'll get to a point down the road if we get some more Lower Decks under our belt, we'll come back and discuss some more of this series. Definitely a lot of humor. I love the references. I think it's great. And the fact that they put the series in 2000 or 2380 does
Mm.
allow them to go back and reference all of the Star Trek series that had come before them.
Yeah. Yeah, that's clever. That's a good move.
Yeah, I think so too. So, anyways, thank you everybody again so much as always for watching and listening. Again, you can find us on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, uh, Threads, your favorite podcast platforms, all of that. Let us know in the comments below if you're watching YouTube, right below this, what your thoughts of Lower Decks are. Do you have a favorite episode, a favorite character? Where does Lower Decks rack and stack amongst the other Star Trek series for you? I know when we get to the finish line of the Spotlight series, Chris, you had mentioned about us going through and kind of racking and stacking all the
Hmm.
pilots.
Yeah.
I'll be curious to see where Lower Decks falls because I think with the Star Trek Legacy series, I think you and I both have a pretty good idea of where we would rack and stack the Legacy series. But I think now that we're getting into all the quote unquote new Trek, I think I'm less certain where you're going to put those.
Yeah, actually, this will be a good discussion as we do the rack and stack to figure out how we'll format it. Should we do
Yep.
like legacy as one list and then new as a different list? And you and I can talk
Yeah.
more about that. What
Yeah.
makes sense to us.
Yeah, it'll be good for sure. Anyways, again, thank you everybody so much for watching. We appreciate it as always. Be sure to stay tuned for the Star Trek Prodigy pilot episode discussion coming very soon. And we'll catch you next time right here on the Random Redshirt podcast.